You know, when we think of Gandhi, our minds almost always go straight to India's fight for independence. But here's the thing. The man who became the Mahatma, he was really forged somewhere else entirely. This is the story of how 20 years, 2 whole decades, in South Africa transformed a young, pretty unknown lawyer into a leader who would literally change the world.
And the transformation, I mean, it is just staggering. Just look at this comparison. On one side, you've got the guy who shows up in 1893. He's 24 years old, a fresh-faced barrister on a simple one-year contract, just trying to make a living. But then look at the man who leaves 2 decades later. He's 45, a seasoned leader, and he's armed with this revolutionary new method for social change, ready to take on the entire British Empire. So, what on earth happened in those 20 years?
Well, it all started with a shock. A series of really personal, brutal encounters with the reality of racial discrimination that he was completely, utterly unprepared for.
To really get the scale of this shock, you have to understand who he was at the time. He was literally the first of his kind in South Africa, a British-educated Indian lawyer. You see, the Indian community already there was mostly made up of indentured laborers and merchants who had, for the most part, kind of accepted the daily grind of racial discrimination as just a fact of life. Gandhi, he had not.
And all that British education, it meant absolutely nothing to the white settlers. Now look at this timeline. What's so wild is just how fast and how relentlessly the system came for his dignity. We're talking within his first week. Day 3, he's thrown off a train, even with a first-class ticket. Day 4, he's physically beaten up. By day 5, he can't get a room in any hotel. This wasn't some abstract idea. This was a visceral, daily humiliation.
But he didn't just take it. Nope. His immediate response, in a letter to the press, was just pure indignation. He basically holds up a mirror to the British Empire and says, "You talk about fair play, justice, civilization. Is this it?" This shows you, right from the very beginning, he was absolutely determined to fight back.
But that initial fight looked very, very different from the protests we all picture today. At first, he tried to play by their rules. He tried using the empire's own tools, the law, the press, to challenge its own injustices.
So get this. He was literally about to leave. His contract was up. But on the eve of his departure, he's asked to stay for just 1 more month to help fight a new law that would strip Indians of their right to vote. And that 1 month, it turned into 20 years. He was the only one there who could draft their petitions, the only one who could speak to the rulers in their own language. He chose to stay. He chose to become their voice.
And this slide really nails his strategic evolution. He starts in what historians call the moderate phase. He truly believed he could appeal to the British sense of justice with well-written petitions and newspaper articles. But when that failed, again and again, he realized, okay, these tools are broken. I need new ones. So what does he do? He invents them. And that's the big shift to the Gandhian phase and the birth of a whole new kind of protest.
This shift wasn't just a new tactic. It led him to develop a radical new philosophy, a method that would not only define his entire life, but would go on to inspire movements for justice all across the globe.
He called it Satyagraha. It's a Sanskrit term, and it roughly translates to truth force or soul force. Now, this is key. It's not passive resistance. It's active, nonviolent, civil disobedience. The core idea is to use moral power, truth force, to confront injustice, not physical force. So what was the final straw? What sparked this new idea into action? It was this deeply humiliating law in 1906. It required every single Indian to carry a registration certificate, complete with their fingerprints at all times. It was a move that essentially treated an entire community like common criminals. Okay, so this is the crucial part, how they responded. They didn't just write another petition, they acted. They collectively refused to register, they held these mass gatherings where they publicly burned their certificates in defiance, and they willingly, peacefully went to jail. And they even started calling prison King Edward's Hotel. By doing that, they completely stripped the punishment of its power and its fear. It was genius.
So, this new form of protest started small, with activists and merchants. But it was about to explode into a genuine mass movement, pulling in thousands of ordinary people who had never been political a day in their lives.
And this number was key to that explosion. £3. That was the crushing annual poll tax slapped on ex-indentured laborers. These are men and women earning maybe 10 shillings a month. It was a tax designed for one thing, to keep them poor and trapped.
So Gandhi's movement got bigger. Just look at this chart. He took on the laborers' fight against that 3-pound tax. He rallied women who were furious about another new law that declared their non-Christian marriages invalid. He united them with the merchants who were fighting trade restrictions. Suddenly, Satyagraha became a movement for everyone.
And the struggle hit its absolute climax with this number. An army, as it was called, of over 2,000 people. Striking miners, women, even children, all marching peacefully across the border into the Transvaal region to protest these laws, fully expecting and willing to be arrested. And the government's response was just horrific. They weren't met with negotiations, they were met with brute force. We're talking mass arrests, starvation, whippings. They even took the jailed miners and forced them back to work in the mines under armed military guard. It was an absolutely extreme test of their nonviolent resolve.
But it worked. The sheer brutality of the government's crackdown on a peaceful, unarmed population sparked widespread condemnation, not just locally, but all the way from the Viceroy of India. The pressure just became too much. The government was forced to the negotiating table, and they repealed the very laws people were fighting against. Satyagraha had been tested by fire, and it had won.
So you see, those 20 years were so much more than just a series of protests. South Africa was Gandhi's political and spiritual laboratory. It's where he forged the tools, perfected the philosophy, and found the faith that he would need for the much bigger fight ahead in India. And the lessons he learned there were absolutely profound. This is where he developed his deep faith in ordinary people, seeing poor laborers sacrifice everything for a cause. It's where he learned how to unite incredibly diverse groups, Hindus and Muslims, rich and poor, under a single banner. He mastered his blueprint for nonviolent struggle, and he learned the harsh burdens of leadership, even facing death threats from his own side.
The veteran Indian leader, Gopal Krishna Gokhale, he actually visited South Africa and saw this transformation himself. And he recognized that Gandhi's real gift wasn't just political strategy. It was this marvelous spiritual power to turn ordinary men into heroes and martyrs.
And so, when he finally returned to India in 1915, he wasn't the same man who had left all those years ago. He was no longer a lawyer just looking for a job. He came back as a leader, with a philosophy that had been tested in the real world, and an absolutely unshakable faith in the power of his people. Which leaves us with this one final and pretty crucial question. Without this 2-decade trial by fire, this apprenticeship in South Africa, could the Mahatma that we all know have ever existed? Could he have possibly led India to freedom?